Transformers is awesome. I know, sky is blue. Incredible! I've always been a huge fan of Transformers, mainly Transformers Prime, which is my favorite TV show of all time, not a joke. It would have been Walking Dead, but Carl died. Something about Transformers is so cool. The interesting lore of the Transformers universe, the conflicting ideologies of the Autobots and Decepticons. I could go on, but I'm sure I don't need to tell you why Transformers is awesome, because it's pretty obvious. And of course, with licensed properties, your immediate thought is, yeah, you know that Optimus Prime guy? I want to be him! And of course, Transformers video games are where you go. But unfortunately, while other pop culture characters such as Spider-Man, Batman, and so on, the robots in disguise sadly haven't got much in the video game industry. But that's of course not saying there isn't any at all, and thankfully, we've gotten the announcement of a brand new Transformers game, Transformers Reactivate, which was announced in 1993! And while I have my doubts, I am very much interested to see what Splash Damage is cooking, if they're cooking at all. But while we're waiting for that, if there's anything to wait on, I think it's time we go through while the admittedly small, extensive library of Transformers video games, and see if these Transformers games are more than meets the eye. See, I've stooped down to the humor of the Transformers 1 trailer. I say that, but I'm hoping it's good. Please, I'm hoping it's good. I don't know if you know this, but Transformers is old. So that means our journey will start pretty far in the past. Not the SNES, not even the NES. We're talking Commodore 64, baby. Yup. It's a Commodore 64 game, alright. Oh no. And you run around this wasteland finding these cubes that make up the Autobot logo. And then after you're done, you do it again. Yep, that's the name of the game here, folks. It is the Transformers after all, and if you want to transform, you gotta keep opening up your menu. Every single key on the keyboard, and you can't map one of them to transform? Maybe they didn't want you to transform that quickly, because it only plays music when you transform. It was the Commodore 64 after all. This thing probably only had like 6 megabytes of RAM in it. You think it can play a song throughout the entire game? Are you crazy? But hey, if you thought this was bad, check out the ZX Spectrum version. Ugh. But if you thought that was primitive, we got another Transformers game on Commodore. We actually start with an intro cutscene with speech, which may sound like nothing, but this was really innovative for the Commodore. Unlike the previous game though, after you see the Autobots from this wonderful police lineup, you're greeted with a weird strategy game where you can send the Autobots to different objectives and it looks like they could care less. You're just spending the entire game just trying to defend the map from the Decepticons. You get these cutscenes when you send your forces out and Bumblebee. Every now and then you may actually get to shoot at enemies with a wonderful background. Wait, what is that coming in from the left? It's really scary because whatever it is, it's scrolling at 3 frames a second. So we just have to sit here and... Is that a giant hippo? After these two games, we didn't receive a Transformers game for an extremely long time. We're talking up until the PS1. But that's in the States. In Japan, there are actually 2 other Transformers games before the massive hiatus, starting with Transformers Mystery of Convoy, exclusively on the Japanese NES, the Famicom. I actually have the cartridge to this game, as when I first found out about it, I just thought it'd be really cool to own the first console Transformers game, and I'm happy to have it, even if the game sucks. And if you thought that was mean, read the wiki entry on this game. As a licensed game early in the lifespan of the Famicom, Mystery of Convoy's gameplay is, let's politely call it unrefined. Yeesh. But they have a point, because I couldn't even get past the first screen. You play as Ultra Magnus trying to find Optimus Prime, and the game is a Super Mario Bros. Clone, as that was the usual around the time. Sadly, game devs back then didn't understand what made both fair and engaging platforming. So most of the time, they were just like, yeah, just make it super hard, that'll work. It's one hit and you're dead, because of course it is. You know, Mario had a similar thing, but not only did the game feel fair, but you also had power-ups all over the place, so you could have 2 hits before death. But none in this game. You're a giant robot. Why is it a one-hit kill? You can transform, but don't, because there's basically no point other than a few sections, and it takes you almost a full half a second in which you can't attack. And the bosses are weird too. You fight The Decepticon logo? Is this a giant Decepticon or is it just a wall that I'm looking at? The final boss isn't even Megatron. It's Trypticon. Who? Nah, Trypticon's cool, but still, why is the final boss not Megatron? Either way, this game stinks, and it was followed up by Transformers Headmasters on the Famicom disk system. I couldn't find a ROM of this one, so I'll once again have to take more footage and eyeball this one. You have these car sections where you're shooting enemies while advancing, and then there are stages that are platformers just like Mystery of Convoy, except they seem to be more like rooms where you have to grab items to move on. However, and this is the good part, you actually have a health bar, which means multiple hits. Whoa, they're advancing! This game could be really bad, but just eyeballing it, it looks alright. Not amazing, but an improvement over Convoy. Honestly, I kinda wish I could play it, but not happening. Not many people seem to know about it, so therefore there aren't as many reviews on it, so I'll just have to trust my gut and see that this game is hopefully okay. But now, after a large hiatus from the video game industry, and once again not seeing a single game in the States, we finally got a game based on Beast Wars. Transformers. I don't know much about Beast Wars, so this will be new territory for me, and it's probably going to stay that way because this game ain't great. So as far as I can tell, the Maximals and Predacons are the Autobots and Decepticons thrown through a time warp, where instead of Hasbro selling robots that turn into cars, they sell robots that turn into beasts. Great! I make that sound bad, but I've heard great things about Beast Wars. I just personally don't see the appeal, and I especially don't like these designs very much. However, I did enjoy the recent Rise of the Beast movies. Either way, we're talking about the game, and it's got issues. I don't know, maybe this game is pretty good, but if it is, then it's aged like milk. First of all, Beast Wars controls are absolutely horrendous. Your movement is clunky as you can't turn and move at the same time, so you have to just kind of turn and face where you want to go and then walk forward. Which I understand was just the name of the game back then, mainly because this game was originally made with D-pad controls. Playing a game like this really drives home how incredible Super Mario 64's controls were. Controlling Mario in a 3D space felt natural, while here it feels clunky. The main problem with this game, and again another aging issue, is that you can't look around without holding L2, and while you're doing that, whatever you're trying to aim for will just shoot you regardless, and that's a big problem when there's so many enemies, and they really love doing that thing where they had an enemy behind a corner where you can't see them so they could just ambush you. Like, come on guys, this is only the first level! This game gives you no tutorial whatsoever and just expects you to figure everything out. Games like this are why modern games are plagued with obsessive tutorials, because we're still trying to make up for the games back in the day that would just throw you in and just say, read the manual or figure it out, loser. I had no idea what this purple bar on the right was. I thought it was a power meter for some super attack, but it's pretty much just another health bar, because in level 2, I don't know why, but the meter just started draining and the game demanded me to transform into beast mode. And then there was this button at the top of this pyramid thing, and I had no idea what it did. Turns out, the game expects you to figure out that you have to go all the way across the map and find out this door was unlocked. Couldn't you have just given me a camera angle like you did with this door in the same level? Then you finally get to the boss of the level, and this is really where the controls show their age, because when you move, your aiming reticle moves away from the boss, giving time for the boss to attack you. So then I had to employ a very unique strategy, which is stand still and spam square faster than you can die. Then I just stopped playing once there was this gap, which try as I might, I just could not get across, and I tried this for like 10 minutes. It's a shame because I really wanted to spend more time on this one, since I'm kind of blowing past the games we played thus far, much less not playing them, but that's okay. Hopefully I can try again on the game's sequel, Beast Wars Transmetals, which I thought was a direct sequel, but it turns out it's actually a fighting game. Okay, I'm not very good at fighting games, but I'll give it an honest shot. Here is the first stage of story mode.
Come on. Beast mode. You correct him as
What was that? This game is chaos incarnate. Your opponent just keeps attacking you like the Joker and you just won't stop. When I do win in this game, it feels like total luck. I feel no joy winning these matches, and I could try and submit someone to this, but unfortunately, I have no friends. And not to mention that before I even found out it was a fighting game, I experienced the craziest opening cutscene to a game I've ever seen, which perfectly represents the gameplay. There was a Game Boy Color version. Ugh, these games are giving me nothing to work with. Thankfully, we have another game on the next-gen consoles at the time, the PlayStation 2, which hopefully should give me something to work with. The first game that many deem a real video game, nicknamed Transformers Armada. And you know what? It's not bad. Though I do have some complaints straight out of the gate. When you select your difficulty, you're given 3 options: Recruit, Veteran, and Commander. And I would think that Veteran, despite the name, would be normal mode in this context, and Recruit is the easy mode. And if I were to wager a guess, Recruit is normal, and Veteran and Commander are hard and very hard mode. The reason I say that is because, my goodness, what was it with these games and not giving you a decent opening level? When you play a game's first level, you want it to be opening. You know, give the player an opportunity to learn the game's mechanics. Super Mario 64, the Sonic Adventure games, Crash Bandicoot, etc. All great opening levels that are not only iconic and memorable, but also welcome the player to get a grip on the game's mechanics without too much hassle. These past 3 games though, you see, we could welcome the player with a focused linear level that individually runs through the game's mechanics, or we could just put like 20 enemies in an open field. Yeah, that sounds great, doesn't it? And the kicker is you can't change your difficulty mid-game. You have to exit the game completely and then start a whole new save file. Luckily, the game wasn't a Beast Wars Transformers situation, whereas when I changed the difficulty, I actually stuck with this one, and it's actually pretty fun. Controls are a bit clunky, but better than what we had previously. I understand the idea that these developers want the controls to feel like you're controlling a giant robot, but surely we can meet somewhere in the middle here. Nonetheless, it's miles better than Beast Wars for sure. Though when the game asks you to do some light platforming, it can be a little awkward. Shooting feels great though. You can even go into recon mode for a first-person view. Though sometimes I swear it either just doesn't work or you have to stand completely still before you can use it. The menus can be a little much and overwhelming, but the loading screens have this really cool effect. Transforming into a vehicle finally feels good, though the level design doesn't take much advantage of that, other than this first level where you need to get over the ravines. The graphics are passable, though thankfully the game runs in 60 FPS, which makes up for it. The game also has these mini-cons you can attach to give your character extra abilities, and they all work really well, and you can use one to fly through the air. But let me just tell you, when you leave the Sun Temple and go to the Mid-Atlantic after you beat the boss, more on that in a second, go back and get this rocket, as it's overpowered as heck and it will help a lot. While these levels are pretty good, a couple of them you can pretty much just drive straight to the boss. Especially the Antarctica one, where there is literally just nothing. The boss fights can be a bit of a drag though, at least for me. The first 2 were fine, but this boss at the Sky Temple was annoying. It keeps throwing me off the temple, whereas I just have to wait until I very slowly fall off, then I have to quickly race to the other side to give me some room to fight the boss. But then there's the boss I stopped on. While it wasn't bad, it happened right after this boss, and that's what made me put it down. Because the game then decides to bring the Decepticon named Tidal Wave, who is huge and only has one weakness, his head. And I gave it multiple upon multiple attempts, and I just gave up. If I wasn't making this video on every Transformers game, I probably would have tried to beat it. As I'm not saying it's impossible or even that poorly designed, I just simply don't have the interest to continue because it's taking so long. I'm kinda speaking negatively, but surprisingly, I did actually like this game. It's not perfect and it's a bit empty and it has some age to it, but it's definitely a good Transformers game. If you're not a Transformers fan, I wouldn't really recommend it otherwise, but if you are, give it a shot. But we're actually not done with the PlayStation 2 just yet, because I didn't know about this, but there was apparently another exclusive to Japan Transformers PS2 game. I was so unaware of this fact that I was about 70% done with this entire video, and my friend Jacob just happened to stumble on this game. Either way, this game is notable for the fact it was published by Atlas. Yeah, I didn't stutter, so that's gotta mean this game is great, right? Well, the game starts off real bad with an opening cutscene that is not only completely barren and stiff, but goes on forever. It's just non-stop back and forth talking between each characters, and every time it keeps transitioning, you think you finally get to be able to play the game, but nope, you still gotta keep watching. Listen, I love a great story in video games, I really do, I get it, and ignoring the fact that this isn't a good story, just show me a quick opening cutscene, play some of the game to help me get invested, then you can spout some exposition in my face. But no, even though I am in fact a Transformers fan, I am totally uninvested by how long and drawn out it takes to get to gameplay. But that's not even going into detail about the cutscenes themselves. I won't go into the animation because, I mean, just look at it. But the voice acting, ugh.
Looks like there's danger out there, and the signal source is close.
Despite this not getting a wide release, the game does have English voice acting, but it ranges from mediocre to awful.
But you've been hearing it for millions of years. I suppose even your tired old ears wouldn't mislead you. That's right, it's me!
And also there's this narrator that makes this game feel more like a Transformers wildlife documentary.
Meet Optimus Prime, a transformer with an indomitable will who loves nothing more than freedom and justice.
And why does Megatron sound like Optimus more than Optimus?
Full of incompetence. The precious power of Energon is far too good for the likes of you idiots. What? I get it now.
But fine, let's get into the gameplay. Yeah, I can kinda see why this game never left Japan. Not only does this game not look good, but the gameplay is either really boring or really frustrating, and it all comes down to how slow and stiff your combat abilities are. This game is a 3D beat 'em up. Your movement is slow and boring, and you only have 2 attack buttons and a gun that does nothing. Yet despite all of that, the game throws a ton of enemies at you. Way too many, so they get the jump on you eventually. Maybe I'm not giving the game a fair shot, because in fairness, this was a last minute addition to the video and I was just getting to the meat of it. So maybe it's fine. I don't know. But I gotta be honest, I really don't want to play any more of it. Because after that long-winded opening cutscene only to be disappointed by the gameplay, I couldn't stomach much more of it. Hey, I'm here for shooting too. You like the fit? I wanted to wear this last time, but I didn't have the shirt. But now we're getting into the games you're probably more familiar with. A change in era, for you see, Hasbro and Paramount were in talks of making a Transformers movie, and that of course meant a bunch of merchandise, and of course, a certain game company, who was on a licensed game kick back in the day, wanted all in, thus starting negotiations for them to have the Transformers license going forward, from 2006 all the way until 2018. This of course started the Activision era, starting with simply Transformers the game. Yeah, that last Transformers game? Nah, that game's weak. This is the Transformers game you want. This is not the Transformers game I want. Alright, first of all, I gotta complain about something. I'm playing the PC version of this game, which I definitely bought back in the day and have had in my Steam account that I definitely had back when this game was being sold. But as soon as you boot it up, it makes you configure controls with no preset for 3 separate controls. For robot mode, car mode, and plane mode. All of those modes. This isn't even that big of a deal, but just setting this up was so annoying and tedious. Oh, and also, it's one of those PC games that's completely locked to full screen and basically shuts you off from using your PC even if you have dual monitors. However, most games let you press the Windows key to minimize the game. That way you can turn your OBS on or set up a screen share to show your friends. However, for this, not only forces you to Control-Alt-Delete and open Task Manager, but I couldn't even get the game to screen share through Discord. This is a minor thing and is only a problem for me, I know, but I have never seen a PC port do this, even old PC games. Okay, back to the game now, and surprisingly, the game is open world. I didn't say it was a good one. Okay, that's a little melodramatic. I think it's okay, but first, we have a massive problem to deal with. As I said, I'm playing the PC version of this game, and because of that, the frame rate is uncapped, which sounds awesome, right? Well, apparently, the game actually doesn't work if ran in 60 FPS. If you keep the game running at 60 FPS, you can't climb walls as Bumblebee, as he will just be stuck in place. The driving feels completely horrible, weirdly enough, feeling more like a hover car than an actual car. The admittedly ambitious destruction system completely folds in on itself, causing vehicles to forever explode, making the second Decepticon mission completely unplayable, and you can't even ram into enemies in vehicle mode. The only problem is that this game has no way to cap the frame rate at 30 FPS in the settings. On my PC, I had to go into NVIDIA control panel and force it to be capped at 30, and everything was fixed. That's absolutely insane. I have never played a game before that has this many issues when playing at a higher frame rate. But it doesn't only fix those issues, it actually fixes issues with the game itself, core game issues. As I said before, the driving felt awkward and like you were in a hover car. However, with the lower frame rate, the vehicles actually feel a lot better. In 60 FPS, the combat felt weird and floaty, but in 30, the frame rate made it feel a bit more weighty and attacks feel better. Sadly, even with that, I still have a lot of problems. Let's get this out of the way first and foremost. Since this is a movie license game, of course they have to use Michael Bay's stupid designs. I think you can guess that I hate these Transformers movies other than the first one. I know people like them, but I never have, and I never will. They turn everything that's great about Transformers, the story, the awesome characters, and clever writing, and turn the series into explosion-filled action flicks for a pubescent man-child. Anyway, what I was getting around to saying is that I hate Michael Bay's designs for the Transformers. They take cool, contrasting characters that you can recognize in an instant and design them in a way to either A, make them all look the same, B, complicate their design, C, make them unnecessarily edgy and radical, or D, all the above. But I'm saying all this because this doesn't only harm the designs of these characters, but it also harms the gameplay as well. Honestly, when it gets nighttime in the game, especially on the Decepticon side, it gets harder for me to see even my character, much less the enemies, because they blend in so easily. I bet you can barely keep up with the footage I'm showing you. Also, the camera is not very good. I know what they were trying to do, trying to make the Transformers feel huge, but I really don't like how they take up so much of the screen, making things way too crowded and kind of pulls you away from the action. But that's not the only problem. The open world can feel kind of empty. About 90% of the objectives take place in the open world, making the visual variety scarce, borrowing the moments you're in a dam or a military base, and even then those areas get old super quick, especially the military base, as it's just desert. The worst bit of the game though is the audio. Sound effects are just drowned out, making combat an absolute slog. Worse yet, it really hurts your enjoyment of the destruction system. As I said already, one of the key features for this game is its destructible environments, which are cool, don't get me wrong, and headlining this is a returning feature from Beast Wars, where you have two separate campaigns, the Autobot campaign and the Decepticon campaign. It encourages two separate playstyles. While with the Autobot campaign you are encouraged not to destroy terrain and objectives, the Decepticon campaign not only encourages you, but commands you to do so. And you would think this is like the coolest thing to ever exist. It's like GTA, but you're a big giant robot. But unfortunately, the audio absolutely breaks the enjoyment because it makes it get old way too fast. As I said, all the sound effects are either drowned out or simply just not there, so you don't get any feedback from destroying the environments. So you don't get much of a dopamine hit like you would get in GTA. That being said, I was impressed by the destruction system, even if it's probably aged by today's standards. Now the game actually ends in a pretty cool way. I'm guessing the Allspark in the game's universe doesn't destroy Megatron and actually makes him more powerful, because while the Autobot ending is of course Optimus taking down Megatron, the Decepticon ending has Megatron taking the power of the Allspark and he rules over Earth, in what I think is a reference to a G1 episode. All around, the game kind of balances out to a kind of mediocre experience. Ambitious for sure, and with some cool ideas, and would lay some groundwork for future Transformers games, but unfortunately, it's just a bit shallow. Though if you're a Transformers fan and all you want is something decent, this'll do the job just fine. However, we're not done with Transformers the game yet. Because remember, this game was released in 2007, which means we got multiple versions to look at, baby! Not only did it come out on PC, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, Wii, and PS2, it got handheld versions, which means same name, different game. And the PS2 actually managed to get the main version of the game, and with the PSP being a handheld PS2, surely the game got ported from PS2 to PSP if you flushed it down a toilet! Oh, this game's rough. Maybe it's good. I don't care though, I didn't play this one. Transformers the game also got a DS version. Oh, excuse me, versions. Because Activision, I guess, saw the success of Pokemon's dual releases and thought, hey, Pokemon can get away with selling two versions of the same game, surely we can too! So how exactly did they get away with selling two versions of the same game? Well, you know how in the console game you could choose between an Autobot campaign and a Decepticon campaign? Well, pick one! Other than the arguable scam that they're pulling here, I gotta say, Transformers the game? DS actually surprised me. In both games you control a Create-A-Bot that as far as I can tell offers no customization. Thank you for that. In the Autobot version, you crash land and get in communication with #NotMyIronhide. In the Decepticon version, you get in contact with Starscream and Barricade, and immediately you're rude to each other, as the Decepticon should. Once there, the two characters actually cross paths, giving synergy to both versions. Honestly though, I think it would have been cool if you could connect the two versions, that way the two characters have the same name on both versions. As far as I'm aware, that's not possible, but it would have been cool in my opinion. But how's the gameplay? It's similar to the console game, though you don't have the destruction system, and there's less overall you can do. But there are notable improvements over the console game. First off, driving actually feels better than the console game. Not only that, but you can scan and transform into almost any vehicle in the game. That's actually pretty cool. One moment you're a beater, then a blue pickup truck, and then a helicopter. When you're out of vehicle mode though, things aren't as good, but they're passable? The DS only has a D-pad, so automatically controlling characters in a 3D space just automatically feels bad. I did get used to it, but it definitely makes the controls rather clunky. But I gotta say, presentation, even with the game up-rendered to a higher resolution, it actually looks pretty good. Some of the character models can look a little disgusting. And yeah, part of this is because I'm upscaling the game, but the fact is, these designs barely look good in the movies. They aren't going to look good all low poly like this. The dialogue is actually pretty good too. There's even voice acting, which I was very surprised by, and I was really happy to see that. Although, why does Starscream sound like
I'm afraid I can't let either of you leave here alive.
that? Although his low poly model makes him look even more like a Dorito. And thankfully, the audio in general is much better than the console game, making it feel good to destroy things. I didn't play that much of this game, and the reason for that is that it's actually surprisingly difficult. Now, of course, this isn't Dark Souls or anything, but for a handheld game, it's pretty ruthless, especially given what you're playing on. The Bumblebee fight with Barricade was pretty bad, because there would be times he would blow off the bridge never to return, and apparently Bumblebee treats water like lava. But the main thing was just the amount of enemies that would absolutely swarm you, and on a small DS screen, I can't help but think this would be totally overwhelming. I was overwhelmed even playing this with a controller on a big screen. Also, speaking of which, one thing I didn't like is how you couldn't transform unless you hit the button on the touchscreen. And sure, part of that was because I was playing this with a controller, which meant I had to put down my controller and switch over to my mouse, but keep in mind, the touchscreen on the DS was pretty bad when using your finger. So I wouldn't be surprised if you had to smash the thing to get it to respond when you wanted it to transform, or pull out the stylus. Saying that though, Transformers, Autobots, and Decepticons was genuinely pretty good, and if I had more time, I would have definitely played more of it. Honestly, I think I prefer it over the console game, but I'm not sure if you would. If this looks interesting to you, definitely give it a try. These games got pretty mixed reviews, with the DS version getting the highest scores and the PSP version getting the worst with a 47 on Metacritic. But then 2 years later, Revenge of the Fallen would hit theaters. I'm sorry for anyone that genuinely likes this movie, but this is the worst movie I have actually ever seen. I'm not even kidding with you. This movie is just non-stop action sequences over and over again with the most thin plot I have ever seen. But despite that, this is the most successful Transformers movie. Even if you think I'm being melodramatic, if you've seen it, you gotta understand what I'm talking about. However, 24 hours before the movie would hit theaters, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, the game, would hit store shelves with 4 different versions this time. And I actually played 2 of them as a kid, the PS2 version and the PSP version. But we'll start with the main version, of course. Alright, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen on Xbox 360. Not developed by Traveler's Tales this time, but by Luxoflux, proud makers of the Kung Fu Panda game. So safe to say, we're in good hands. Gameplay-wise, it's like a more focused, linear version of Transformers the game. Instead of being an open world, though, you have these big arenas and you can tackle certain objectives. It is fine. It is absolutely fine. There is nothing wrong with this game, but there is nothing incredible about it either. It's just there. The camera is pulled back, meaning the robots in disguise don't take up as much room. The shooting feels a little better, I guess, but it's still not great. Melee attacks are pretty basic, and once again, they made destroying things still not fun. There's a few missions where you're tasked with destroying a certain objective, but you have to shoot forever. How is it so hard to make destroying things fun? I didn't know they could do it, but they made it not fun. While seeing content about these games, because since YouTube knows I'm doing a Transformers video, I've been getting non-stop Transformers content recommended to me, and it seems that people have good things to say about this one. And I mean, yeah, compared to what I've been playing from Activision's catalog, I guess it's okay. But once again, I just don't feel anything when I played this. I finished 95% of the Autobot campaign in one night and just felt nothing, and I barely even remember anything from the game. I played this game a couple months ago and I seriously cannot tell you a single thing about it. The only thing I remember is the tutorial being painfully slow and taking way too long, and not even to mention the fact that you have to do it twice. Once for the Autobots, and once for the Decepticons. And it's the exact same thing, same location and all. I remember being completely baffled that the game offered if I wanted to free roam an area that I cleared, only for there to be absolutely nothing! What's the point? But the final boss, oh, the final boss. It was the best part of the game.
You see it? On the pyramid, that's the harvester. Now you gotta shut that down, which will be hard, I know, because there's a Decepticon there juggling school buses, but if you could paint him out of the picture.
Sam is okay in the movies, not incredible, but in this game he's priceless.
Oh, you see that? Oh, you nailed him. You nailed him. Do it again. Get him. Get him. All right, good news, you scared him off. Bad news is, he's got friends, so look out, all right? I know you're hurt. Just remember, no sacrifice, no victory. You gotta watch that, man. You're taking some serious damage. That's it. Hurt him. Get him. Hurt him. Hurt him. He's killing you. I mean, literally. You are so not winning right now. You see your damage levels? Those are the damage levels of a loser.
I have never emotionally recovered from that. It's too bad the final boss is lame though. The Fallen keeps sending out Decepticons for you to fight, but really you could just ignore them and keep spinning around the pyramid shooting the Fallen until he goes down, and it's not fun at all. I was gonna try to play through the Decepticon campaign, but honestly, I was just done. It's not because the game is bad, but because it's nothing that makes me want to play it. And not to mention I have to take out my Xbox 360 to play this, and I don't want to bother. I'm sorry. Not to mention the Decepticon base is so dark I can't even see anything. Although this line made me laugh.
This mission was accomplished with great speed. We Decepticons are always swift in action. Although you, Starscream, are equally swift in retreating. I have never retreated. Ever! Of course not, Starscream. You simply advance backwards.
Also, this was also true for the first game, but I forgot to mention that I find it weird that Frank Welker voices Megatron in the movie games, but not in the movies. It's like seeing an alternate universe where Michael Bay let Frank voice Megatron, which is interesting. Speaking of him, something that's really cool is that you can unlock episodes of the original Transformers G1 cartoon, which is really awesome. Apparently there's 6, and if I cared, this would be a really cool way to get me to play most of the game, but I just don't care enough. And I don't even need to anyway, because I have this big box set. That's how dedicated I am to this franchise. This takes up so much room. And of course, because this game was made under Activision, this was the last game Luxoflux made before they shut down. They just couldn't handle the pressure of developing Kung Fu Panda 2. I will say the ending to this game is pretty cool. And by that I mean the Decepticon side, not the Autobot side. And they definitely didn't just do this so they could reuse the same boss fight. But I digress. Similar to the film, Megatron follows the Fallen. However, this game, Fallen promises to make Megatron a Prime, and Optimus reveals to Megatron that Primes are born, not made, revealing the Fallen lied to Megatron! There's only one little problem with this setup though. They literally reveal this while the game is tasking you to destroy the Fallen, and as far as I know, there is no build-up to this whatsoever. So literally in one cutscene you're like, ah yes, praise the Fallen and his star harvester, may we suck the sun to power him. Then the very next moment the game tasks you to kill him. Way to deflate such a cool idea. I kinda wish the movie did this. I think it would have been a decently cool twist, but that would require an actual script, wouldn't it? Let's move on from this. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Let's move on to the DS, and hopefully the 2 different versions was just an experiment, and for this one they just have one simple nope. I gotta say though, booting this game up, I was actually getting really excited. The presentation of the game was already starting to be an improvement. I thought the first game was the best they could do for the DS, but no, look at this game. Dare I say it's fairly competent. The tutorial is pretty lame, but hey, the controls are so much better now. The main reason is that you can transform into a vehicle now whenever you want. No need to tap the touchscreen. Actually an improvement. The models look so much better too. Optimus looks a little off and the characters still look disgusting, but that's Michael Bay's fault, not them. And I think the protoforms are the same this time, with the different versions being who meets up with them first. Optimus Prime or Starscream. If Optimus meets you first, you're all nice and thankful that the Decepticons didn't get to you first, and being fairly respectful to denying Starscream. In the Decepticon version though, you're just a straight up jerk.
Starscream, I'm here for the protoform.
I'm not going anywhere with a traitor like you, Autobot.
But man, I am so excited to see how this game keeps improving. Oh man. Yeah, my totally normal DS and definitely not an emulator kept freezing the game at this part. And yes, it did this for both versions of the game, meaning I can't play either. It's a shame because I was not hamming that up. I genuinely was impressed by what I was seeing with Revenge of the Fallen on DS and wanted to see it improve. Oh well. Well, let's try the other handheld version, Revenge of the Fallen on PSP, which, like I said, I actually played as a kid. Yeah, I was one of those weirdo kids who, while everybody was playing their Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS's, I was sheltered at my Meemaws playing Transformers Revenge of the Fallen on PSP, not knowing what a Game Boy Advance or DS was. I'm not joking. I think we only had it because one of my cousins handed it down to us, and all we ever had for it was Revenge of the Fallen and some baseball game. However, unlike Transformers the game and its abomination of a PSP version, the game is also an abomination because Transformers Revenge of the Fallen on PSP is a twin-stick shooter on PSP. Despite how stupid that sounds, and it is, I was really excited to go back and play it, and I really wanted to finish it all the way through, and for the first few missions, I was really digging it, even from a nostalgia point of view. Until we get out the tutorial, and then the game's difficulty goes from regular Cheetos to Takis. I don't know how, but the game's difficulty just all of a sudden spiked up, and I don't know if it's just for this level or not, but it is absolutely ridiculous. The first few missions, I was going, oh, this game ain't nothing, this game's easy. So just all of a sudden, wham! I guess my brother beat a lot of this. I probably could get through it, but frankly, I just don't have the time or power to do so. But trust me, I wanted to. It just wasn't meant to be. But see, there's a story here. I don't remember how, but the PSP charger broke and little Cole was without his PSP Revenge of the Fallen video game. Oh no! Thankfully, my mom got us the game on PlayStation 2, which was completely different. Going through this menu is extremely nostalgic. I don't know why, but this sequence of sounds I always found really cool when booting up the game. I don't know why I love that so much. The game starts with Optimus being shoved out of a plane, and in the movie, he's like a few feet up in the air, but for some reason in this game, he's all the way up here. Different from the console version, by the way, is this game actually doesn't have two separate campaigns. It's one campaign where you switch between the factions as you progress through the story. The animation in the cutscenes leaves a lot to be desired, but man, what is this? Color? Sure, admittedly it does look a little bit too colorful sometimes, but man, it's so good to finally see some color and not some dull flat grays. The game is more of a beat 'em up with very light combos, with basically the only combo being a shield bash. But you know what this game has that the other versions don't? Mirror puzzles! Da-na-na, da-na-na-na-na. The best thing about this, though, is that it pulls a Spider-Man where you can just skip it. What the developers also skipped was the ability to transform. Like with the PSP game, you're forced into robot mode, which kinda blows, but hey, at least they didn't do the opposite. That'd be stupid, right? That'd be so stupid my camera would shut off. But no, unironically, this game actually does have something over the console versions and the movie, and that is a proper Optimus and Megatron fight. It's not an insane twist or anything, but unlike the movie, it's actually properly built up with a decent payoff. The Fallen is actually much better here than in the movies too. The Fallen was barely even in the movie, but in this game, the Fallen is actually somewhat more present. Not a lot, but it's something. And I actually really like this exchange between Fallen and Megatron.
Leave it to me, my lord.
The last time it was left to you, we had to retrieve your defeated scraps from the bottom of the ocean.
Vengeance is a strong motivator.
Vengeance welcomes mistakes.
But how could I forget the campaign and its multiplayer? Assistance! Ugh, this is lame. Literally baby mode so little kids can play with their older sibling. The game ends in Egypt with Optimus fighting Megatron then stopping the Fallen.
Such heroic nonsense!
Reference! And then it ends on sequel bait? For a movie game? I don't know if Chrome Studios had something planned and wanted to follow up on the Revenge of the Fallen game with a looser interpretation of the next Michael Bay movie, but that just never happened, and I admire the balls if that was the case. That's just really weird to end a movie license game on sequel bait. Oh, also, you want to see how much Sam is in this game?
Optimus, man, it's good to hear your voice again, man. You don't know what it was like.
That's it! Sam literally shows up in a voice line at the very end of the game. Wow. Fortunately, the game does have an actual multiplayer mode. It's okay. Me and my brother would play this a good bit, but it's basic. You just take turns attacking enemies on a whopping 3 arenas and 6 characters. Yikes. All in all, it was really fun revisiting this version of Revenge of the Fallen. It might be my favorite, though I don't know if that's accurate to the game's quality or my nostalgia. I feel like the gameplay is flashier than the Xbox 360 versions, and again, I think the story is a little bit more enjoyable, but it's super duper short. I finished this game in like 2 days across like 5 hours. But unfortunately, even though I think Revenge of the Fallen is one of the worst things to ever exist, the movie did even better than the first, and Michael Bay's third film was shortly underway, with Activision yet again still holding the license. However, I actually want to take a break from the movie tie-in games and take a bit of a detour and talk about more licensed games. But not for the movies, but for the TV shows. Exclusively on Nintendo DS, we got Transformers Animated the Game. I've heard great things about the show, but unfortunately I have not watched it. The art style catches my eye as an adult, but as a kid when it was airing I was all like, ew, I want CGI like Prime! So that immediately turned me off. Which is very wrong and stupid of me. I should not have immediately judged something just because it's not my preferred style. I put this game down 10 minutes in because it's not my preferred style. What is that style, you may ask? A puzzle platformer, which isn't too bad, but it's with multiple characters. And you may ask, what's the problem with that? Well, you know how in LEGO games your second character, moves? They don't in this game. So once you've completed a section with Bumblebee to open a door, you have to switch to Bulkhead and Optimus to move them through the door, which I'm sorry, it just turned me right off right then and there. Not just that, but the controls are bad too. First of all, the game is entirely played on the bottom screen of the DS, already meaning I had to switch up my recording setup. Thanks, Activision. But while the first two games we looked at, I appreciated the fact that they were fairly respectable about the touchscreen use, Transformers Animated the Game constantly requires you to use the touchscreen. Take a look at this flying enemy here. Here's me trying to zap it with Bumblebee's electric power up with the button controls. You see the problem? Great. Now the one thing I was actually fine with the touchscreen controls on was this thing you could do with Optimus's battle axe, where you could fly it through the air to hit switches. However, you do this by drawing a line with the touchscreen. Only problem is, where's the line, Bart? You have absolutely no idea how the axe is going to go because there's no physical line showing you the trajectory, which I could imagine getting annoying real fast. I'm sorry if there are those of you that like this game or have nostalgia for it, but this game just immediately turned me off. I'm sorry. What I do want to play though is Transformers Prime the game, exclusively on Nintendo's current platforms at the time, and even a launch title for the Wii U. I knew nothing about Transformers Animated, but it is the complete opposite with Transformers Prime. I'm gonna have to stop myself from talking about it, but Transformers Prime is my favorite animated TV show, straight up. And yes, I'm one of those fans who says Transformers hasn't even come close to it. Come on, Hasbro, why can't you just make another show like Prime? Is it really that hard? Dude, I remember when Predacons Rising was coming out, I had to be sure I was staying the night with my Meemaw, and I fortunately got to. And me and my brother got a party pizza, and I was there for the premiere and everything. Oh, that ending, oh, so good. Anyway, before I keep rambling, Transformers the video game? It's fine. Yeah, just gonna cut straight to it. Transformers Prime is the definition of fine. If you're fine with a completely average tie-in game with the best Transformer show, like me, here you go. I will say, it is impressive how they got the exact same game running on Nintendo 3DS and even Nintendo DS. Though really commendable, it probably hurt this game in the long run. The visuals have a lot to be desired, and sometimes the voices are bit crushed, which was odd. I gotta admit the story here was actually pretty cool. Not amazing, but cool. Presentation-wise, it honestly feels like you're playing a 4-episode arc of the show. The lamest one, but hey, it feels like it. They even use the soundtrack from the show, which is god tier, but they really like to use that tense one all the time. Like, guys, it's not that serious, he's just grabbing a rock. Still, it's cool regardless, and they even got all the voice actors from the show to reprise their roles. And I think they even got the voice directors from the show as well. There's even a new character introduced in this game, which never made it into the show. Thunderwing, a servant of Unicron sworn to destroy the Keeper of the Matrix. The controls are kind of stiff and the jump is clunk, but it does the job. The combat is where the game really starts to feel mid though, as it's so slow. As once you hit the button, it takes agonizingly long for the punch to go. And the tutorial at the beginning of the game shows that you can even transform into a car and attack your opponent to make the combat as repetitive as you could ever dream of. And the game is pretty short, as I beat it in 3 hours. The final boss, I guess, was kind of cool, even if I was just standing there shooting at him for the entire time, and even Jack comes in, which was cool to see. There's nothing much else to say to this. There's nothing insanely good or insanely bad about this game either. It's just a mid tie-in to an amazing show. Speaking of that though, the continuity of this game makes absolutely no sense. This game came out near the end of Season 2, and not only is Arachnid on the Decepticons, and she even brings in the Insecticons during her boss fight, when as soon as she found out the Insecticons, she was already rogue from the Decepticons and got locked in a cocoon until Season 3. But also, Starscream is on the Decepticons with Arachnid, and they were only on the Decepticons for like 3 or 4 episodes. But let's, for the sake of argument, just ignore the Insecticons in her boss fight. That means that this game somehow takes place in Season 1 right after Arachnid joins the Decepticons, and right before Starscream goes rogue for a season and a half. It's a little shaky, but I could see it working. Dreadwing's in this game. It's literally this one cutscene too. This one cutscene ruins everything. But that's it for Transformers Prime the game. The only thing notable is that it was a Wii U launch title, and the multiplayer mode made my friend annoyed, which is really funny. Oh, speaking of the multiplayer mode is whatever, honestly. Like, literally, you can experience everything it has to offer in a mere 2 hours, but that hasn't stopped some people. As per my YouTube recommendations throwing Transformers content at me, like I said before, I somehow uncovered this big rabbit hole of a channel that has been uploading multiplayer videos since the game launched. At the time of this writing, this YouTube channel just uploaded part 304. And at the time of this recording, it's at 314. Opposite Rainbow, do you need help? Is someone locking you in a room and forcing you to play this multiplayer mode just over and over again? Just give me a location, we can help you, I promise. Well, that was a distraction, I guess. But 1 year before this game, Dark of the Moon hit theaters. And you remember when I said Revenge of the Fallen was genuinely the worst thing I've ever seen? Yeah, that was because I recorded myself saying that before this garbage. Fallen was bad. It was. But Dark of the Moon was even worse, because the pacing was just so bad. The movie started off lightning fast, but then just slows down to an absolute crawl. But Cole, you can't say that. The movie was so dark and brutal. The Chicago destruction was so cool.
This means nothing to me. This means nothing to me, alright? You mean nothing to me.
But for the game side of things, fellas, things are going to start turning around here, as I can assure you that this movie license game actually holds something truly special. So get ready, because we're looking at Transformers Dark of the Moon Stealth Force Edition first. The game starts with this ugly cutscene. The art style itself isn't the problem, it's just these designs just don't suit it. Well, let's get to the gameplay then, and well, you know how in Revenge of the Fallen for PS2 you could be in a robot form and not a vehicle form? Oh my god, I have no words. Transformers Animated, I'm so sorry. Transformers Animated I put down just because I was getting bored the minute I started playing, but this is horrible. I barely scraped by the tutorial and then I couldn't even handle the first mission and I shut it off immediately. This is one of those games where I fundamentally cannot imagine the developers playing this and going, yeah, this is playable, this is fine. Because it isn't! As I said already, this game is entirely played in vehicle mode, so this game is a vehicle combat game, and there is actually somewhat a reason for this, even though it's still very dumb. For Dark of the Moon, they introduced a new type of Transformers toy, where it would be a car, and you could actually pull out the weapons. So I guess since they had to make a same name different game anyway, they kinda used this as a way to sell the toys. The strategy would probably make much more sense on the 3DS, but sure, okay, sound planned I guess here on the Wii. And some editions of the game actually came bundled with a Stealth Force toy. Problem is, no one's gonna buy the toy if the game sucks! The main problem, no, not even the main problem, the problem are the controls! First and foremost, this game does not support multiple controllers. It's either Wiimote, Nunchuck, or nothing. In vehicle mode, the controls are what you would assume. They are perfectly fine. The way they control is a little floaty, but serviceable. Stealth Force, however, is your combat mode, and while in this form, a meter on the bottom left depletes. What? Why? Why is there a meter that depletes to where you can't attack? Imagine in a game like Devil May Cry, where you're in an arena of enemies and the game goes, oh, sorry bro, you gotta run around the stage and gotta collect some energy before you can start attacking and doing combos. Like, what? Now I could understand ammo or something like that, but not being able to be in combat mode at all? What is that? That makes the game feel like primarily a racing game or a vehicle exploration game with the combat mode. But no, combat mode is a main feature. It's what the toy you're advertising is based around. Oh, sorry, controls. While in Stealth Force mode, you use the control stick on the nunchuck to move around the area, and press B to fire weapons. You use the tiny D-pad on the Wii remote to rotate yourself around. Who played this and thought this worked fine? Who? Now, if this was the control method for the Wii Remote and Nunchuck combo, and you could use the classic controller for a far more comfortable setup with 2 analog sticks, sure, absolutely. But like I said, this game does not support the Classic Controller Pro, or GameCube controller. They played this and thought there was not a single way to improve it or design levels or the game design around these controls. But no, the first level actually drove me insane immediately and I put it down. Now you might be saying, Cole, I agree with all this, and you're right, that is horrible. You make amazing content, and I'll hit the subscribe button because for some reason I haven't yet. But since you are using Dolphin, can't you just make a control scheme with an Xbox controller and play the game that way? And you know what? I could do that, 100%, I totally hear you. But frankly, I'm already booting up Dark of the Moon Autobots and Decepticons. I was actually looking forward to trying Dark of the Moon DS because Revenge of the Fallen refused to work, and I really wanted Dark of the Moon to be better, but unfortunately, it isn't. For some reason, Vicarious Visions isn't developing this version of the game. It's Behavior Interactive, the developers of Transformers Animated. Fortunately though, it's not a puzzle platformer, but that doesn't mean it's good. Disappointment number 1 is that they ditched the Creaticons, which I thought was a huge cockblock. I actually really like the Creaticons, but I guess I can understand if people didn't. But that I guess I can get over, I suppose. What I can't get over are these models. In Revenge of the Fallen on DS, they were actually looking pretty good. Now? Thankfully, Optimus is the worst of it. Everyone else just kind of looks on the same level as Transformers 1 on DS, if not a little worse, which is disappointing. The game as a whole has switched to an over-the-shoulder view, which for a DS game, I don't think works very well. And once again, Revenge of the Fallen improved the controls so much, but here, the controls are so much more stiff and clunky. The vehicles feel so much worse even over the original game, and I thought that we all agreed in Revenge of the Fallen to map the transformation to a button. It's back on the touchscreen, and I hate it. And I don't know if this is because I'm emulating the game, but when scanning, the screen would flicker a bunch. Ugh. Yeah, I really wanted to give this game more of my time since I didn't get to play Revenge of the Fallen, but I could barely stomach this for so long. I would rather play this over Stealth Force Edition, that's for sure, but I still wouldn't rather play it. Now, finally, here we go. Transformers Dark of the Moon for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. No PC port, weirdly enough, but as I said, this version actually holds something truly special. Oh my, this feels like a video game. Keep in mind it's still not great as it's pretty dang short and lacks a lot of polish, but man, compared to the last 2 movie games, it might as well feel like a blockbuster. The controls are buttery smooth, the vehicles feel great to use, and that includes stealth mode, and I feel like the level design, especially towards the start of the game, puts a pretty big emphasis on vehicle mode, as there's plenty of long stretches of road to hop in and out of robot form. The Stealth Force mode feels alright, though most of the time I just found it easier to just hop out of robot form, blast them away, and hop right back in. The weapons feel great to use, as this is the first game since the Transformers Armada PS2 game where it actually feels good to shoot enemies, and it's not just fodder for you to dispose of. And the game actually has decent boss fights. There's only a few, and one of them is stupid hard for me for some reason, and the final boss is actually pretty insane as you fight Mr. Driller. The only thing I'd say objectively wrong with the game is that the frame rate likes to skinny dip in the spring a lot of the times, and the game randomly freezes needing to load in areas. Make no mistake, this actually feels like a video game. A short video game, but a video game nonetheless. The game looks beautiful too, especially compared to the other games we've been playing, which don't look bad, but have a lot to be desired. Here though, I mean, just look at this. The game looks great, and even a lot of cool effects to shake up the action. Though, why does the screen shake so much on this part in Chapter 2? I just shot a window, I didn't drop a nuke on Phil Spencer. That joke shows you how long it's been since I wrote this script. Interestingly, the game doesn't have an Autobot and Decepticon campaign like we've been having. It's just one campaign where you play as the Decepticons near the end of the game, which I think is fine as it makes the story a lot more focused. And the story is also interesting because it's not just an adaptation of the film, nor is it its own take, but actually a prequel to the movie, which unfortunately does mean that the game does end on a weird note because it doesn't tie up any loose ends, but the game follows the Decepticons raising the Decepticon assassin Shockwave. Ugh, God, I hate Shockwave. I know what they were going for, really I do, but come on, are you guys just against colors? Oh, by the way, quick tidbit. Did you know that the model for Shockwave is just in Genshin Impact? I have no idea why, but it's just in the files and no one knows why it's there. Why is Shockwave in Genshin Impact? Get him out of there. Get him away from the pedophile. Anyway, another cool thing this game did was have Warpath in the movie universe. And from what I can tell, I believe he was supposed to appear in the Dark of the Moon movie, but didn't make the cut. So this is his only appearance in the movie universe. And I think he looks cool. Except, well, is that a tank sight or are you just happy to see me? Also unrelated, but why does Megatron become Truck? Megatron is tank, not truck. The game ends with, like I said, fighting off Mr. Driller in a pretty decent Shockwave boss fight. Shockwave gets away and Optimus swears to stop him, and the Decepticons swear to start their plan. And Optimus truly has no idea what's coming for him. And then the game's credits starts, revealing the developers of the game. High Moon Studios. Here we go. Finally, this was what was so special about the game I was hinting about. This game may be the first High Moon Transformers game we've been covering, but this is actually their second Transformers game they've made. Because you see, not only was Activision given the rights to make movie tie-in games or show tie-in games, but they also were allowed to make a game in a separate universe that started Hasbro's new Align continuity. And the game was going to set in stone Transformers lore, as the games are not on Earth, but on Cybertron. Yes, for one of the very few times in Transformers history, even to this very day, we were getting a piece of Transformers media fully set on Cybertron. This is unbelievably monumental. This is something that Transformers fans have always wanted. Hell, they still want it even nowadays. And this game was finally going to do that. And not only that, we were going to be in the war that started Transformers in the first place, the war that hadn't been explored ever. And not only were we finally going to see it, but we were going to play it, which was unprecedented for a licensed game. And not to mention, this wasn't some cheap cash grab. This was something that the developers were working their butts off to do, as they've been working 3 years on this. And now we'll finally get to experience it as we take a look at Transformers Cybertron Adventures, which was the companion title on Nintendo Wii. Strap yourselves in, folks, because once again, this is absolutely fine. It's an adaptation of the console game, but it's an on-rails shooter. You ever played Halo Spartan Assault in an arcade? It's basically just that. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, we'll just look at it. The footage speaks for itself. Honestly, it's a little disappointing we didn't get a decent adaptation of War for Cybertron, but I don't know. I don't mind this. It got really bad review scores across many review websites, which I think is pretty harsh. I didn't spend too much time on the game as it's just kind of harmless. I would gladly play all of it over the Dark of the Moon Stealth Force Edition, that's for sure. I would have even played more of it, but my Wii remote on my totally legitimate Wii U wouldn't work very well, giving me insane hand cramps. I don't really understand the review scores. I think reviewers were just upset it wasn't the main version. But now, it's finally time to play the real version. Transformers, War for Cybertron, Autobots and Decepticons. Oh, this foreplay is killing me. Well, would you look at that? It's yet another Transformers game on Nintendo DS. Whoa. Though there are a couple of noticeable things. For one, this is the only DS game not on Earth. What gave that away? And I gotta say, Cybertron looks so cool even on DS. And when you see the whole planet on the title screen, it looks adorable. The other changes is that you can play as 2 playable characters at a time, which is pretty cool. And the enemies have a rock, paper, scissors mechanic to spice up the gameplay a little bit. Though, I don't know if it's just me, but the control, again, just doesn't feel as good, so I had to emulate the D-pad to the analog stick, but even that didn't feel great. Either way, Transformers War for Cybertron, Autobots, and Decepticons on Nintendo DS are completely fine versions. They feel like the previous DS games, just a little bit more polished, and it's on Cybertron, so it's better by default. The Decepticon version really freaked me out though, because I booted it up and I'm playing as my Autobot character, and I thought I loaded the wrong, put in the...
Nobody cares!
But no, I guess they didn't want to make a tutorial for the Decepticons. Megatron looks pretty weird too. Alright, now we can stop messing around now. I'm excited for this, and if you clicked on this video, I'm sure you are as well. Transformers War for Cybertron is the best Transformers game we have looked at so far. That's evident just by the intro that immediately gets you invested, showing you the War for Cybertron, but also perfectly representing both factions because both Optimus and Megatron both share lines of dialogue that feel like they're talking to each other, even though they aren't, countering each other's beliefs.
Our tragic war has ravaged Cybertron.
It is a necessary war to return us to glory.
The Autobots will never sacrifice freedom.
The Decepticons will bring this world to order.
Our defeat would mean the end of everything.
My victory will mark a brilliant new beginning.
One shall stand.
One shall fall.
I really appreciate just how much they treat both sides with equality. When developing the game, High Moon Studios was told by Hasbro that for every Autobot action figure bought, they would buy a Decepticon figure as well. So it was clear to everyone that while the Autobots are beloved, the Decepticons are just as beloved. And it wasn't just a case of playing as the bad guys is cool like in the movie games. It was a case of fans loving both sides of the war, not just the good guys. With the game's director Matt Teeger saying that he's truly a Decepticon at heart. So it was clear that was what made Transformers fully unique, and that was a major focus for the game's direction and tone. When you begin the game, there are two separate campaigns, with the Decepticon campaign taking place first, but if you wanted, you could play the Autobot side first, and you can fully enjoy each on its own. War has ravaged Cybertron for millions of years, and Megatron seeks a way to turn the tides of war into his favor, and he uncovers Dark Energon, currently being held by the Seekers led by Starscream. Megatron wields its power and is the first to do so, and Starscream pledges his loyalty in exchange for learning to wield it. In return, Starscream activates the Enertron Bridge to manufacture more Dark Energon. Megatron infuses Cybertron with Dark Energon in an effort to control it and turns Cybertron itself against the Autobots. During this, Megatron kills the last Prime, Zeta, in the process. With no Primes left, Optimus, chosen by the High Council to be the next Prime, accepts his calling even if he doesn't feel worthy, and journeys to the core of Cybertron, Primus, to reverse the effects of Megatron's Dark Energon infusion. However, they don't make it in time. Primus decides the best and only option is to shut down, and requests that Optimus takes a portion of his spark and the wisdom of the Primes, the legendary matrix of leadership, to keep it in safe haven in hopes for Cybertron's return. Optimus Prime accepts it and reluctantly agrees to leave Cybertron as life on it is unsustainable and constructs an arc for the remaining Autobots to find a new home. The story of War for Cybertron is so investing no matter if you're a Transformers fan or not. The pacing is a little fast with only 2 big cutscenes between each chapter, but what they give you I think is enough, especially if you're a Transformers fan, new or old. And the dialogue during the missions, whether it's world building or just in-character remarks between characters during the heat of battle, just makes it all the better. Optimus steals the show. This is his game. You can tell that he is destined to lead the Autobot cause, but doubts himself, showing his humbleness and regret for the war of his world. And the scene of him accepting the matrix of leadership is iconic, and with the added context of Transformers Prime just rounds it all together. But now it's time to talk about the gameplay. But first, what I didn't mention about the campaign is that it can all be played in cooperative multiplayer. Unfortunately, no split screen is all locked to online or LAN play, which does stink, but I don't mind it. The problem is, in 2018, Activision lost the license to make Transformers games, and in 2020 they shut down all online servers for their games, which means the co-op is completely unplayable. However, thankfully, though it does require some work, fans have made some dedicated servers, and while it's not too hard, it can be a tad annoying, especially if you don't have the game in the first place and have to use dodgy piracy sites to get the game not only for you, but your friends as well. The game is just fine single player, you just have AI controlled partners of course, but playing this campaign with friends makes the whole experience 10 times better. I got my friends Jacob and Rudy to play it who have no idea what a matrix of leadership is, and we had a grand old time. Do you need healing? Yes you do. Heal my pussy.
No.
Okay, hold it.
No.
The joke's not funny anymore.
Yes, it is.
No.
I think it's pretty funny.
I was kind of scared that they wouldn't quite get it, but thankfully we had a ton of fun, and some of the level design felt designed for co-op, like with the Zeta Prime boss fight, where there are these things that collapse on top of you that you have to avoid. And in single player, this is fine, but in co-op, 3 players scrambling to avoid these things is comedy gold. Ooh!
Oh god,
Are you
god,
kidding
no,
me?
weakness!
Dude, this game sucks.
Oh god!
Yeah, okay. Oh.
Dude, I hate this. Dude, I'm literally gonna throw my controller out this goddamn window.
Just watch for the things.
What?
Uh-oh.
Oh my god.
Oh, what?
Oh, move.
They're still going?
Yes. When you're not pushing your teammate in and being an eyewitness to it. All right, for this part, just stay in the front.
He crushes your JustCole.
Good. I literally witnessed that.
I may or may not have pushed him in there.
And the best part, there's even competitive scoring mode. It does absolutely nothing, but that's what I love about it. The game just constantly keeps score of how much better you are and who died the most.
Rudy died 13 times.
However, unfortunately, I did very much intend on playing this whole game, but certain circumstances kind of happened to where we couldn't meet up and play the game in co-op, and I really didn't want to just sit on this video, and I couldn't rally up anyone else to play it, so unfortunately, we stopped at the first Autobot chapter. But let's get into the gameplay, and it is magnificent. The game at its core is a Gears of War inspired over-the-shoulder shooter, and while shelter shooting is encouraged like in Gears of War, you can't snap behind cover like you can in those games. The guns in the game feel amazing, and the audio makes it all the better. You got tons of guns at your disposal. Assault rifles, which are a favorite of mine, sniper rifles for wider open areas, health rays to help heal your team, which you're going to need, we'll get to that, grenade launchers to detonate bombs on your opponents, and even some plasma guns, which can range from cool to suck. And the presentation of the game is really freaking cool, as the gun transforms to your arm and becomes a part of your body. Including the machine guns. I mean, you just literally take this off and you just carry it like a normal gun. The only complaint I have is that I wish you could have 3 guns instead of 2, especially for the scientist class who are healers. The reason for that is because you're basically forced into sticking with only one weapon, because you need to be bonded to your health ray to help heal your teammates. So when you're in wider open areas, you're forced to either have a sniper rifle and just hope that you can find another weapon that you like later, or stick with your weapon and just have faith in your teammates and not help them defeat enemies. You do want to hold on to your health ray though when you are a scientist, because despite the nature of this game being a licensed game, this game can get pretty ruthless in its difficulty. But don't be alarmed, nothing really feels unfair, and I really think it makes it all the better. Not just because it is more investing, because war is hell and all. Not only does it differentiate itself from the other licensed Transformers games, which were either piss easy or unbalanced difficulty, but really it makes each chapter feel like its own. I was under the expectation of us breezing through the campaign in like half a week, but because of this game's difficulty, we stuck to 1 chapter a day, minding the final chapters, which were just the final bosses of each campaign. But while that might sound like it's taxing, it really isn't. Admittedly, I was a little annoyed as I really wanted to get through this game to get this video out, and not to mention we kind of wound up not playing the rest, but because it makes each chapter stand out and not feel like you're just rushing through the game to get it to the end, it made the game far more impactful in the long run. And once again, I'm just so genuinely happy that my friends were enjoying playing the game with me. My expectations were pretty low on whether they would enjoy playing the game, but I think they wound up seeing what I saw even if they weren't Transformers fans. Controls? Let's talk about that. Movement feels great. It still has that sense of stiffness of controlling a giant robot, but it doesn't fight with you at all like Transformers Armada does, for example. And transforming between forms is exceptional. Jumping and transforming into a car, or being in a tight space and transforming into a tank to blast some enemies, or being one of the Seekers and boosting yourself really fast and then transforming back into a robot from midair just feels so fantastic. It all just feels so great to play just for the controls alone. And the gameplay is carried by its soundtrack and presentation. Now that we're on Cybertron and not Earth, we get awesome looking levels with cool details and memorable environments, even if the metal look can be a little repetitive, and I do wish we had more color. I mean, Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp look barely indistinguishable, as the desaturated colors can make the Seekers look pretty similar to each other. I understand that they wanted to go for that whole war is dark and gray and has turned our world dark and gray, therefore I am dark and gray. But one of the things I like about Transformers is their cool contrasting character designs that you can tell apart in an instant, and I feel like that's lost with the desaturated look. But that's not to say I don't like the Transformers designs. I will say, I don't know why Megatron doesn't have a mouth, as it's just a red void for some reason, but his design looks pretty alright. But everyone else, these are great evolutions of the G1 designs, just made to look more Cybertronian. Bumblebee has got to be my favorite, but Optimus also looks amazing too, with only his Prime design upping it. But the soundtrack goes so hard, bro, sounding a bit more Doom-esque than you would probably expect it to, making the levels feel a lot more epic, and the guitars used during the cinematics add a lot of weight. The audio is just great in general, the guns sound amazing. This is one of the highlights of the game, as High Moon famously tried not to reuse any sound effects and made their own in-house, and they did such a great job. The game is just great. Can't you tell? Do I even need to talk any further? This game was amazingly awesome, with an epic campaign giving Transformers fans everything they could possibly want, and a multiplayer mode that to this day has a dedicated online community long after the servers were officially shut down. Transformers War for Cybertron is a good game, and not only did fans know that, Hasbro and Activision knew it too, with Hasbro saying it was the most highly rated critical success of any game under the Hasbro brand, and announced they were already underway for a sequel mere months after War for Cybertron's ship date, entitled Fall of Cybertron. Things were exciting, all was well, but there was a looming worry.
Are we ready to start? I believe we are, motherfucker.
You see, despite the good press, Activision has a habit of, ruining things. And while Fall of Cybertron was already seeming to be a slam dunk, there was also a worry that the mighty scythe of Bobby Kotick was getting mighty thirsty. Worries were made even more, worrying, as it was announced that High Moon Studios would be developing the tie-in game for Dark of the Moon, like we discussed before. And they would be developing it at the same time as Fall of Cybertron, likely causing tension and crunch work on both projects. And like we talked about, the Dark of the Moon game was decent. Not incredible, but decent, which meant the Fall of Cybertron game was poised to receive the short end of the stick. And sure enough, it was announced that Fall of Cybertron would not receive the cooperative campaign that War for Cybertron had. They explained that the structure of the game just wouldn't really leave room for co-op, but at the same time, this was a huge thing to omit, and spelled doom and gloom for the game, as it was becoming evident that Fall of Cybertron was in fact becoming a victim of Activision's thirst for killing studios. Nonetheless, Transformers Fall of Cybertron was announced to be receiving its first trailer during the Spike 2011 Game Awards. So while the game has tons of potential, no matter what they show, I think it's best to keep expectations low, especially if all they have is a CGI trailer with no gameplay. Bumblebee! What happened to you? And what is this song? This trailer conveys such emotion, and there's all these explosions and shit, and all the CGI looks fucking fantastic. What the fuck? Did 5 robots just transform into one giant Decepticon? Oh my god. No way. Is that Grimlock? Ah! This trailer is absolutely incredible. This trailer does everything that Michael Bay couldn't dream of doing in 2 hours that this trailer does in 2 minutes. The sound design, the CGI, everything. It's just so fantastic. I hate CGI trailers. I think they are bad for the industry, and we really shouldn't be using them. But that being said, this is one of, if not my favorite game trailers of all time. Yeah, double standards and all, I don't care. This is amazing. And the game came out August 28th, 2012. And it was fucking amazing! Transformers Fall of Cybertron is the greatest Transformers game ever made, and dare I say that it has competition in being the best licensed game ever made. It does everything that War for Cybertron set out to do, polished it to oblivion, and evolves it into an experience that's absolutely unparalleled. The game takes place soon after war. The Autobots have fucking lost, bro. Like, Cybertron, he's gone. So Optimus and the rest of the Autobots take a spaceship, the Ark, to fly to a planet rich with raw energy. The game opens with them on the spaceship, but gets taken down by the Decepticons, as Bumblebee, now without a voice box, rushes through the Ark into a pretty exciting tutorial. You see, most games have the tutorial at the beginning of the game, but this game has it at the end. I told you this game was revolutionary! Bumblebee gets shot by Megatron, and then the game cuts to a few days before Earth launch. The Autobots are in a rough state trying to keep everyone alive, and trying to find enough energon to not only power themselves, but power the ship while the Decepticons are trying to take down the Ark. But then, this big-ass dude shows up with his name is Metroplex, and then Optimus gets taken captive, and this dude rips open the building we're in, and just goes at him like, bro, I think you got him, I think you got him. Then Megatron dies. Well, that was the best 20 minutes of my life. Alright, game over. Alright, we're done. Starscream takes control over the Decepticons, because of course he does. And while the Autobots continue to find energon and repair the ship, they look to find Grimlock, and then... well, the story does kind of meander a bit. Like, we go to look for Grimlock, we find this transport with energon on it, the Decepticons take back the transport, Megatron comes back to kick Starscream's face in, and find the remains of Trypticon, and then the ending. It's a lot more exciting than I make it sound, but I must admit the story is a little bit lackluster. But that's not to say the gameplay is lackluster, because First of all, let's talk about graphics, as High Moon Studios actually embrace the warm feeling of color. Sometimes it can be a little bit too much, like this is still a war after all, it's fine for there to be some desaturation, but 95% of the time it looks absolutely fantastic. And honestly, even though we're still in the 360 era, it looks closer to a PS4 or Xbox One game, and the attention to detail is absolutely spectacular. The small coil animations on Optimus's back, the transforming animations are the smoothest probably in the entire franchise, shows and movies included, the scripted segments, the awesome set pieces, and the audio logs dishing out that juicy, oh so good world building and lore. It's just all so good. It feels like the developers really wanted to push transforming more. While I did say the level design in the first game had it in mind, in this game, there are a ton of more wide open long stretches of area for you to drive to your next waypoint. And like I said, the game here is just so polished. There's a ton more weapons at your disposal, including more abstract weaponry. But you just can't go wrong with a good old-fashioned assault rifle. Each character even has their own special ability that changes from character to character. You can send out Rumble and Laserbeak as Soundwave, Cloak to sneak up on Decepticons with Cliff Jumper, Grapple the ledges with Jazz, to just being able to send out a fucking airstrike with Metroplex with Optimus, making every level feel fresh and engaging. And the difficulty isn't too bad either. Sure, there were a couple of sections that I kept dying to, but that's because I'm a dumbass. But unlike the other games I played, I actually want to get past those sections as they don't feel impossible, just rather challenging. I say that, but then there are the parts where I'm the Decepticon Bruticus, and it's anything but. Just like we saw in the trailer, we see 5 full-size Decepticons combined into one big dude robot, and it not only feels great, but it looks great too. There's so much weight to your movements, but it just feels so awesome as you just pummel your way through the tiny Autobots and just annihilate your objectives. Not in the same vein though is Megatron. When he comes back in a very cool redesign, by the way, making him look more in line with his Prime look, the game makes you earn your spot back on the throne, as the game just keeps throwing out Decepticons for you to mop the floor, and then you just shoot Starscream off your throne like, this is my faction, bitch! Then you track down Trypticon after the Autobots took him after the last game, and Megatron, not even knowing if Trypticon can even hear him, just outright low-tier gods them and then forces them to become the warship we see in Transformers Prime. But the big feature of the game, Dinobots, baby! The Dinobots in the original G1 cartoon were creations of Ratchet, but the higher-ups at Hasbro didn't really know what to do with the Dinobots in their new universe. But Matt Teeger was adamant that the Dinobots should be in the game, and made a super passionate presentation on why they should be in. And they did, and it's worth it! In this universe, the Dinobots were actually a normal team of Autobots that were captured and turned into horrible, horrible mutations of dinosaurs. He just saw these cool dinosaurs on Earth and were like, and experimented with all sorts of species, including Insecticons. We even see Hardshell from Transformers Prime. Don't tell him what happens to him though, and more importantly, who did it to him. Unfortunately, you only get to play as Grimlock and technically Swoop in a flying section, though you do get to play as them in the multiplayer, as they were added later as DLC. Though they play more like your traditional Transformers. But for Grimlock, oh, it's worth it. It's a fucking Robot TX, what do you want me to say? It's a little annoying because you're constantly limited by this rage meter that in my opinion just does not last long enough, but the moment you do get to play as it, makes up for it. Just stomping out and even using fucking flamethrowers to take out Insecticon bugs makes a Floridian like me very happy, because it means I get to take out my anger on the bugs that we have to deal with during the summer, aka right now at the time we're recording this. Yeah, that'll show you to get in my eyes, you fucking genets. And then, once he finds the space bridge, you get the final level. Which is a fucking hype train, because you're both trying to take down the Autobot ship and protecting it at the same time! You start out as Soundwave taking out the weaponry, then you switch to Jetfire shooting out the tow cables, and then you switch back to Bruticus demolishing up the ship and taking out the fuel tanks. And then right after that, the game tasks you with taking him down as Jazz. Jazz, I love you, but mate, you lead him towards EMP bombs, firing airstrikes, and then finally, we come back full circle. We transition back to Megatron shooting Bumblebee, and after Optimus drops a hard line,
After eons of conflict, I finally see the truth of your words, Megatron.
And what might that be, Optimus?
This universe, no matter how vast, will never be big enough for you and I to coexist.
then you can choose between finishing the game as Optimus or Megatron. After all of that, after that entire section, you get to choose which one of the factions has the last laugh. And during this boss fight, you get these cool exchanges like Megatron all like, "You should have spent more time in the pit," and Optimus is all like, "And you should have spent more time in the library." All of this while the ship is being torn apart and sucked into a giant wormhole. Like, hey guys, I know you're fighting war here, but maybe worry about the giant portal? It is so intense. And I love it! Then whoever you pick gets one final blow, and then the ship pulls apart as both factions get thrown into the portal, and then the credits roll. That was so perfect. There's no way. I genuinely can't think of another way that could possibly make this any better.
You got the touch! You got the power!
Is this not the greatest game to ever exist? This is the greatest ending to a video game ever. It's not absolutely perfect, but the scale of everything, the set piece, the constant switching up between factions and giving service to fans of both sides, and literally being able to end the game as either Optimus or Megatron, not even for a bad ending or anything, literally just because, gives everything such a good feeling of closure. While this is the start of something truly amazing, starting the Transformers as we know it today. Transformers War of Fall of Cybertron, and especially Fall of Cybertron, are fantastic games. The definition of hidden gem. High Moon got a hold of something truly special and put so much effort, polish, and love into every little thing. You could tell that the developers loved working on it and wanted to push the boundaries of expectations. These games are not only great games in their own right, but something truly special for fans of Transformers. This is why people are still talking about it today, and the communities of these games are still flourishing. These two games were astronomical experiences. These two games are beloved for a reason, with people that love and adore them, with positive memories that last for years to come. Until the rust sets in. After the success of Transformers Fall of Cybertron, logically, you would assume that Activision and Hasbro would be thrilled and want a third game. And while not being outright confirmed, there was at least thoughts or plans of a third Cybertron game developed by High Moon Studios. However, Activision got a hold of another license, Deadpool. Look, I have no hate towards this character or the series. I absolutely love Ryan Reynolds' take on the character, but you have to understand that the movie released in 2016. Deadpool the video game came out a full 3 years earlier in 2013. So, does anyone want to tell me why Activision thought the best course of action was to rip all the stuff of High Moon Studios off of the Transformers franchise and focus on an entirely new license that didn't have wide-lasting appeal? And not only that, grant High Moon Studios a budget of $100 million to produce it? It just boggles my mind. What is the thought process behind this? Deadpool is a great superhero, massive air quotes there, but at the same time, Deadpool was a very niche superhero. Not only did he only have comics, which, while successful, doesn't have wide appeal as a movie, but also, Deadpool as a character does not have as wide of appeal as something like Spider-Man, Batman, or Superman, because Deadpool is literally called the Merc with the Mouth, meaning that kids, you know, a target demographic for superhero-related media, were completely off the table. And this wasn't an adaptation of something kid-friendly like his Ultimate Spider-Man appearance. No, they were staying true to his character, which meant this game could only be sold to adults who didn't know what the fuck a Deadpool was. So again, I have to ask, why did you want a game that cost $100 million to produce? In what world would that make a profit? Again, no hate towards Deadpool, but it just doesn't make any sense. I don't even know if it would make a profit after Deadpool's movie giving him wide appeal. But 3 years before? Are you kidding me? So after it was made and produced, it was found out that it didn't hit any of the profit quota that Activision was hoping for? What? So in response, you think Activision would go, hey, we had our expectations too high, is job bad, go make Cybertron 3, we'll get through this. No! Activision blamed them for it, shut down half of its workforce, and exiled them to go work in the Call of Duty mines, where they have been stuck there ever since. So with them gone, Activision had to get someone else to develop a new game per their contract with Hasbro. The Transformers movie universe was supposed to end with Dark of the Moon, or at least Michael Bay's take on it, but with Hasbro only seeing money on the wall, clearly never caring at all about quality, renewed the Transformers universe and wanted to make a Transformers cinematic universe. Something nobody ever wanted, but, and I don't know who brought this up, Activision or Hasbro, but someone on either side saw Age of Extinction and the massive success of Transformers Fall of Cybertron and got an idea. What if we combine the universes of both Michael Bay's cinematic continuity and the Cybertron games? And that decision changed everything. The next Transformers game would seek to combine both continuities of High Moon's Cybertron games and the Paramount's movie universe. So that meant, not only was this game a movie tie-in with Age of Extinction, it also had to be a follow-up to Fall of Cybertron. But since High Moon Studios was shackled to the Call of Duty mines, they had to bring in Texas-based Edge of Reality, which was an inexperienced studio who mainly just ported titles to other platforms. Activision forced them to do something that not only every fan hated and not wanted, but also had them develop a follow-up to Fall of Cybertron with their lack of experience. See, all that's in the past. A good man would not hold a grudge about that. Transformers: Rise of the Darkspark is one of the worst games I have ever played. Straight up, even the title music is bad, as it uses this generic background music that does not fit the game whatsoever. Which, okay, sit down for this. You're an hour and a half into this video, you can sit down for a sec. This main menu music is a royalty-free track called The Watcher by Liquid Cinema, and because of the nature of it being a royalty-free music track, it has been in so many places, even used in official capacities, like a Wonder Woman extended featurette. But even more hilariously, this was used on the news.
Live from clickorlando.com, News 6 Plus, and WKMG.
I can say, without a shred of irony, without a shred of humor, that this game was so lazy that it used breaking news music as its main menu music. We haven't even started the game yet. Let's just get this out of the way real quick. How is this game an Xbox One and PS4 title, yet it looks way worse than what we had on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3? Even weirder is that for the Cybertron segment of the game, they just ripped up all the assets from Fall of Cybertron and just slapped them in. The environments in this game just look so goddamn repetitive. Literally, because they keep reusing the same assets. So many of the floors in this game just feel like fucking tiles, as it's just squares of textures duplicated, 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 or just stretched it out, making the textures look like they literally wiped their nose with the textures and just slapped it on. And no matter if the textures are just duplicated or not, they're just so flat and lifeless, and most don't even look like they even fit in the environment. I applauded Fall of Cybertron for how they actually embraced color and said that sometimes it can look a little bit too much, but this game dials everything up to 11. The colors are just so saturated, washing everything out. Does this look like a dead Cybertronian world to you? And don't even get me started on the UI that looks like from a freaking mobile game. And that's not just me being over dramatic. One of my friends just pointed this out just out of nowhere. Not to mention it plays this generic ass music that pops up rewards when you level up, and oh boy, loot boxes. Woo! The attention to detail is gone. There is no props for world building like in Fall of Cybertron. Some of the transformation animations just fucking suck. Earth Optimus, who you only get to play in one level, doesn't even get his camera panned up so you can see his vehicle form. And all of the Earth models in general just look so bad, even as adaptations of the movie models, which is contrasted by the reused assets of Fall of Cybertron, which are designed and built to absolute perfection. So next to the Earth models, it just looks like an embarrassment. When Optimus opens doors in Fall of Cybertron, it's like poof. But in this game, it's more like and I even caught them reusing this animation. Same camera angle and everything. Although Optimus is looking very small in the frame. Well, you know why? Because this was Grimlock's opening door animation in Fall of Cybertron! But for how much copy and pasting they do in this game, they didn't copy over any of the level designs or even the concepts from Fall of Cybertron. And that means the level designs are so bad because they are just long stretches of nothing with like 50 enemies just all gangbanging you at the same time. It goes back to those other Transformers games where they didn't know how to make engaging and fun levels, so they just dump waves and waves and waves and waves of enemies one after another, making the levels feel unfair and moreover slow and unfun. But oh, this game knows how to be unfun. In fact, this game is the king of it, because this game just drags and drops both Bruticus and Grimlock from Fall of Cybertron. Wait, I think I'll get there. And it's just sad, man. The Bruticus section goes on for far too long, and you're just walking around punching enemies that try to swarm you that just slows you down more than actually grants you any bit of fun. But poor Grimlock, cause he got nothing! Not only does it make absolutely no sense him being here, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but he just comes in with absolutely no build-up like an office coworker late for work, and his design is the worst of anything in this godforsaken game. He just looks so disgusting. Granted, I didn't like his design in Age of Extinction either, but they made it even look worse than that. And like I said, it's just drag and drop from Fall of Cybertron, so his transformations is the exact same with a broken camera angle, and his G-transformation animation, the dinosaur form just pops out of existence! In robot form, not only does it look even stupider, but he has a club now instead of a sword, yet they use the exact same animations! So Grimlock uses a club when it looks like he's using a sword! I didn't say you could stop, camera. Oh great, I'm out of battery. That's cool. Yeah, that's real cool. Hey, and I haven't even mentioned the second worst thing about this game yet. For some reason, on the Earth segment specifically, for some reason not on Cybertron, the mercenaries keep repeating the same lines of dialogue, sometimes seconds after they just said it. You'll just be battling Lockdown's mercenaries and they'll just be going, let's see what we got, let's see what we got, let's see what we got. That doesn't even make any sense. Shouldn't it be, let's see what you got? And also, they keep saying, they got away, they got away, they got away. I am a giant dinosaur who is currently tearing your face off. I cannot physically get away. Aw, Drift, he's so cool. He's a Decepticon turned Autobot, and he doesn't like to use guns because he's such a good boy now. Why is he a Decepticon turned Autobot? When is he Decepticon turned Autobot? I don't know. It's a shame, really, because neither the game or the movie goes over that. But they will just beat it over your head over and over and over again. Just how cool he is, and how the team is so lucky to have him. During the final level, they go after Lockdown in this place, and Drift stays behind to assist Grimlock. But then just a few minutes later, you meet back up and Optimus is all like, thank goodness you're here. And Drift is like, yeah, it's good to be back, Optimus. Motherfucker, you were just outside! But now let's talk about this stupid story. This game opens up with something crash landing on Earth.
What was that?
It is the past come calling.
The Autobots seek to investigate and find the bounty hunter Lockdown in the Darkspark, and the antithesis of the Matrix of leadership. Whereas the Matrix grants wisdom, the Darkspark does... it freezes time or something? I don't know. And then the game awkwardly switches back to Cybertron. Out of the 14 chapters in this game, 8 of them take place exclusively on Cybertron, while 6 take place on Earth. Already not a good balance of the two continuities, but when you take into consideration when you come back to Earth in Chapter 10, the game switches chapters in the middle of gameplay. No bridge, no story, no nothing. In the other games, and all of the Cybertron segments, there's always a cutscene closing out the chapter you're currently in and bridging it over to the next chapter. But after Chapter 10, it's just like they couldn't bother anymore. The story is dumb, but moreover, it makes no sense. First of all, the big reveal of Lockdown's plan is that he wants to use the Darkspark to make a time bridge that goes back in time so we can bring back the War of Cybertron to the present, so we can be a bounty hunter. Like, what? Lockdown in the movies doesn't strike me as a guy that cares enough about profit to do something like this. It's the most generic, stupid thing I've ever heard, and I watched the Michael Bay movies! Speaking of the movies, similar to the Dark of the Moon game, it's a prequel to the movie. How the fuck is this a prequel when at the beginning of the movie, Optimus is rolling in a movie theater after Cemetery Wind hunts down the Autobots? Okay, well, you know, what if it's maybe a sequel to the movie? Well, last I remember, at the end of AoE, Optimus fucks off into space to find the Makers and doesn't come back until the last night. Oh yeah, just a minor little thing. Lockdown got cut in half! Why is Stinger in this game in an alliance with Lockdown? He is made by that Stanley Tucci guy and wasn't made until that film, and not sentient until Gavatron throws the switch. And on the Cybertron segments, it takes place before the Ark lifts off Cybertron. In Chapter 8, the Autobots go to the remains of Trypticon, which were held by the Autobots in Fall of Cybertron. But for some reason, the Decepticons have it in this game. Then as they fly out of Trypticon's mouth, it's the wrong head! Pro tip for you game developers, especially if you're just lazily reusing models from the previous games in the series that you're doing, how about reuse the right model? Megatron doesn't get his new body until right before the Ark takes off in the last game. So if this takes place right before that, Megatron should be in his old body, which was in that last game. None of this makes any sense, and this is supposed to be a tie-in with the movie. What's the tie-in? In the Dark of the Moon game, there was a point to the tie-in, even if it was boring, bringing over Shockwave and then him doing nothing in the film. And the only point of the Rise of the Darkspark was to bridge the Cybertron games with the continuity of the movie universe, but it just doesn't make sense. In Age of Extinction, they set up this new piece of Transformers lore. Transformers Knights, woo! And they even say that Optimus was a knight, which, well, stupid in the movie universe in its own right. If the Cybertron games are the origin of the movie universe, that makes even less sense. When or even how was Optimus a knight? When on Cybertron, Optimus was a humble, unsure of himself librarian. How does Grimlock already have an alliance with the Autobots when Optimus literally had to fight for it in Age of Extinction? In fact, why does Optimus have to fight for their alliance in Age of Extinction when Grimlock already does have an alliance with Optimus, who constantly berates him for running when they should fight? So I would assume that Grimlock would want nothing more than to head off to China to fight off some Decepticons in Age of Extinction. Nothing about this makes any sense, from the story of the Cybertron games or the movies, which doesn't have any continuity to begin with. Did Hasbro want to tie in with the Cybertron games to the movie cinematic universe that never happened? Is that what all this was about? You know, fine. Let's just beat Lockdown, which is probably one of the most tedious boss fights I have ever played. And let's see if this game maybe has a cool ending to make it all worth it. Okay, here we go. The ending. What have you got, Prime?
Down sought to manipulate the past in order to control.
There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. It's just a black screen, and the credits is just the background of the title screen. And when they run out of it, it just goes black, and they keep looping that breaking news music. So, things got a little out of hand. So let's just take a deep breath. And let's get real for a second. Transformers Rise of the Darkspark is one of the worst experiences I've ever had. Not just as a gamer, as a Transformers fan, really just as someone who lives and breathes on Earth. Transformers Rise of the Darkspark is a sad, terrible game to play. It's just an amalgamation of tearing down assets that were made by people with passion and love, and then just Frankensteining it all to an experience that nobody ever wants. And if the game was just good despite all the canonicity problems, but it's not. It's terrible. It's garbage. The animation is so bad. The AI has lug nuts for brains, and most importantly, it doesn't have any of the detail and love that we got before. I just feel so bad for all the people at High Moon Studios who made such incredible games, and then them just get teared down into whatever this is. But you have to understand, this burned a lot of people out. And I guess Activision didn't want to mess with either continuity anymore. Not the movie universe or the Cybertronian universe. So they had one more game to make before their deal with Hasbro was off the table. And then we got Transformers Devastation. Now, things are going to sound pretty weird at the start, but I need you to listen here. Because I just need you to understand that this is something not a lot of people wanted after Rise of the Darkspark. After Rise of the Darkspark and burned everybody out, nobody wanted a safe G1 Transformers cartoon game. But that's exactly what they were doing. They didn't have faith in the movie fans or the Cybertron fans or any of the current shows running at the time. They just had faith in G1 just to play things safe. They hired Platinum Games, who they've hired before for their licensed movie gaming ventures, and then just did whatever they did for their last two games, the Korra game and a TMNT game, I think. And they just kind of recycled everything and just slapped a Transformers G1 skin just to play things incredibly safe. And nobody really wanted that. Not after Rise of the Darkspark for sure. And that's why I think nobody bought it. The game flopped and the Transformers license was done by Activision. And we didn't receive a single Transformers game, console game anyway, since. But it's such a shame, because Transformers Devastation, it rocks! So I have to assume Platinum went into a meeting and asked, what if we made Transformers awesome? But the problem is, Transformers is already awesome. So they went back and made it even more awesome! Transformers Devastation is a Platinum Games game at its core. It's over the top. It's stupid. It's action-packed. It's got great combat. It's Platinum Games. But it's also Transformers. As far as I can tell, they got everyone back from the original G1 cartoon to voice act in the game. Optimus sounds fantastic and like barely anything has changed since the 80s. Bumblebee is back to sounding like Bumblebee. Frank is back, and while I like Fred's take on Megatron, man, it's good to hear Frank Welker again. But we got Scott White doing an impression of the iconic Christopher Charles Collins, rest in peace, voice of Starscream, and he sounds great. I'm not the biggest fan of the G1 cartoon, but I must say, going back to this classic style really made me smile, and I love it, and helping out with that is the excellent presentation. This is a great adaptation of G1. The colors are so vibrant, the cel-shaded outlines on all the characters make the models pop, and all of the models just look and feel so on point. Can't say much for the mouth animations, as they can look a little weird, And also, like in G1, they do a transition, you know, like the ba-na-na-na-na, but it looks and sounds really bad in this game. Yuck. But other than that, this game is what I think of when I think of crisp. The lighting looks excellent too. There are moments in this game when it's sunset where the game looks genuinely beautiful. You know what else is beautiful? The gameplay. It's Platinum Games, of course this kicks ass. You doing some punches and kicks and some successful dodge rolls, freezing time for a bit, and then you could just do a rapid attack like and the set pieces in this game really help the gameplay. You're just fighting off a big giant Devastator and also fighting Starscream in a space bridge. Like, this is wild. However, that's not to say I don't have some issues. First of all, I mean, I gotta be honest, as much as I love the gameplay, in typical Platinum Games fashion, it can be a little bit repetitive. As much as I love that button mashing goodness, it did get a little old towards the end. And I think part of that was because I mainly play as Optimus throughout the whole thing, because he's kind of the only good character in the game other than Sideswipe, but I remember trying Grimlock and he was fine. I feel like he just requires a little bit of practice. Also, I really think the base guns should have been more useful because they suck. They got barely any ammo and do like no damage. You can craft more guns and weapons, and we'll get into that in a sec. And you may say that they intentionally made the base gun bad to force you to try the other guns, but really it did the opposite. I got so used to just punching my way through enemies, I just kind of stuck to that and never really cared about the guns. The other reason I didn't really care is that I feel like the forging mechanic is really overwhelming. At some points during the game, you can go to the Ark to equip and forge new weapons, but there is just so much for someone like me. I have no idea what these weapons play like, or if they are any good. I wish the game did a better job at teaching it all to you, because it kind of just throws text on screen, and those type of tutorials, I hate them. And this game is really fun, don't get me wrong, but sometimes it can be not fun. Like this carrying Red Energon mission. Who thought this was fun? And then you gotta take down like 4 giant big robots before you can progress. Like, what the heck? But even despite all that, Transformers Devastation is really fun when it is. It's one of those games where when it's fun, and when it's not, it's just kind of mid or can be a tad overwhelming. Kind of the same with the soundtrack too, because the soundtrack is awesome, if a little generic. I think the final boss disappointed me the most though, because there was this video that put the end from Sonic Frontiers over this boss fight, and it was literally perfect. And then I get to that part in this game, and it's just kind of the same battle music that plays in all the other fights, which is good, just kind of lame. But I saved the best for last. The story in this game is really good. Megatron finds this piece of Cybertronian technology, the Ferrotaxis, which not only holds the history of Cybertron, but also has the power to cyberform Earth into a new Cybertron. But because of that, it would wipe out all of Earth's inhabitants as well, and of course, the Autobots need to stop it. But at all cost, they don't want to destroy the Ferrotaxis. So Optimus and Megatron fly off into space, they duke it out, Optimus takes the Ferrotaxis but can't shut it off, and Megatron reveals he put it in one last failsafe. In order to stop the Ferrotaxis, Optimus has to destroy it, and he decides that it's best for the humans to decide their own fate, rather than them annihilating it for the sake of bringing back their home. No! It's thus that Optimus proclaims the Earth is their home now. Honestly, this ending is a good substitute for the third Cybertron game. I doubt that's what they planned for or anything, but really it just kind of ties back into those games really well. War for Cybertron being all about how Optimus would give up anything for Cybertron, but then decides he has to leave it. In the same vein, it kind of comes full circle in the ending of this game, wishing he could bring back Cybertron, but decides that Earth is his Cybertron now. Not only a great way to cap off the Cybertron games, but a great way to cap off the Transformers games in general.
Now, we are a part of Earth. And we must treat Earth as though we were forged here. And we must protect our home, no matter the cost.
And that's the end of this ridiculously long video. We've mostly had some mids. Well, we've had some highs, and we've had some lows. But I gotta say, I think I enjoyed myself a little bit. It's a shame that Transformers didn't get the same video game attention as something like Spider-Man, Batman. But from what we got, the highs were really good. Transformers War of Cybertron, Fall of Cybertron, and Devastation, while not perfect games in any way, there's a connection between these games for a lot of people, myself included. And I think that's worth it, even if the games I covered weren't the greatest in the world. And the movie games weren't even that bad either. I mean, the first game was ambitious, even if it was a little bit bad. Revenge of the Fallen was just kind of boring. Dark of the Moon was pretty good, just a little bit short. And the DS games were the definite highlight of the video. I was so surprised by how good those DS games were. Especially the first two. Dark of the Moon was okay. War for Cybertron was really good. That's about it. But we had a lot of misses. We had Transformers Call of the Future, which was bad. We had the NES game, which was bad. We had Transformers Dark of the Moon Stealth Force Edition. Oh, that one. I couldn't even stomach that. And of course, Rise of the Darkspark being an absolute tragedy on humanity. But even after all of that, for what we got, I think we can't complain too much. I think I can't complain too much as a Transformers fan. It's just a shame that we never really got any Transformers games after Activision. I mean, with Spider-Man, after their catalog, we had Spider-Man PS4 come out pretty much right after, kind of refining the formula and giving us a Spider-Man game that's genuinely good, no matter what it is. But Transformers, it just kind of stopped. After Transformers Devastation, we didn't get a single thing afterwards. And that's a shame, really. It is. It's really a shame. But if there was a future where Transformers War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron were mid, but then we got an amazing Transformers game afterwards, maybe I wouldn't take that away. I don't know. Well, anyway, that's going to be it. What was your favorite game in this video? Did you play? Were there games that you didn't even know existed? I probably would willing to bet that you didn't know a couple of these probably existed, especially that Transformers Call of the Future one. I had a lot of fun working on this video, and I'll definitely do a video like this again. I don't know when, I don't know what type of game it'll be, but I'll definitely do this type of video again. Probably not for a while, because this took a long time. But, you know, when I come back, maybe we'll do something pretty cool. Maybe we'll do Spider-Man? No, that's a joke. I wouldn't even consider that. Do you know how long that video would be? I mean, 50 likes. I consider it. I would consider it at 50 likes. I didn't say I'd do it. I just said I consider it. Don't think that. But I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. And hopefully we'll come back with Transformers Reactivate. But let's just hope one day that the Transformers series will come back into the video game space and we'll get a Transformers game that is more than meets the eye.